Okay, we're on to chapter 10. We're going to start a entire system, the muscle system, muscular system, and start out talking about muscle tissue itself and its not only its characteristics but the physiological functions that take place in order to make a muscle contract, which is the big thing that when we think about muscles, we think that about their function for us. Muscle tissue is three primary types. It is a primary type of tissue. It's one of the four. It's one of the big four, I guess, not really a big four, but epithelial, connective, nervous, muscle tissue. So that means it has a cell in it, a type of cell that performs a function that no other cell in your body performs, and that's that ability, that specialized ability to contract. All three types of muscle tissue, skeletal, cardiac, and smooth, include this type of cell, this contractile protein that have the ability to pull on something. In the case of a skeletal muscle, pull on a bone and cause movement because of it. This particular chapter is mostly about skeletal muscles, although we will talk about cardiac and smooth. You do go into cardiac muscle in even more detail when you learn about the cardiovascular system, because cardiac muscle is found in the heart. Smooth muscle is found all over, and we will talk about it and its design toward the end of the lecture. Skeletal muscles are the muscles that are attached to the skeletal system. They allow us to move with that, with the idea that you have muscles attached to bones and bones come together to form joints. Functions of the skeletal muscle, and your books come up with 6, and that's, I probably can't think of too many more. First one is to produce movement, and there I don't think there's any question about that. Second one, to maintain posture and body position, and this is something that you know, but you haven't necessarily defined. But your muscles are in a constant state of contraction unless you are asleep. And even when you are asleep, your muscles they're on the ready, that's for sure. But this whole concept of being able to hold your head upright, being able to stand up, being able to sit up, and even being able to, even having tone itself. So having some degree of contraction of the muscles is what we call muscle tone. A little bit different than posture and body position, because you are opposed to gravity, I guess I might say, with body position. But even opposed to gravity, this idea of muscle tone, and what I mean is, even when you're laying down, your muscles have a certain degree of contraction, and that's what we call tone. Everybody has muscle tone. It's in layman's terms, it's gotten kind of popularized with regard to bodybuilding, or somebody who actually exaggerates their muscle tone or tries to improve their muscle tone. But everybody has muscle tone. Support soft tissues. Think of the abdominal area, where you have the abdominal area and also the back. Anybody who has a problem with their back, one of the first things that a physical therapist will do is try to get you to strengthen your core. And so you have the soft tissue that muscle is supporting there, as well as other areas where you have muscles supporting, or what do I say, guarding, not guarding, because we're going to use that in a minute elsewhere, but or shielding, I guess, maybe. It's kind of the same thing, but I mean, well, supporting is a better word, supporting soft tissue. And then this concept of guarding, many people know what a sphincter is, a sphincter is a circular muscle that closes an opening. And what is meant by this guarding is that if there's a compartmentalizing of an area, and although some of you may know quite a bit about the digestive system, but as you learn about the digestive system, each stage of digestion, something new happens. And so when something new happens, it's a chemical that causes that to happen. Sometimes it's well, except for the mouth and except for fat absorption, it is a chemical that causes digestion to happen. And when we have chemistry, and we're talking about chemistry, many times we want to keep one area of chemistry separated from another. So one chemical environment separated from another, and that's what muscles can do. Muscles have the ability to separate one environment from another, and we call those sphincters, and you have several of them throughout your whole body, sphincters. Maintain body temperature. All you have to think about is the last time you shivered, and your muscles are actually contracting to try to warm your body temperature, and store nutrient reserves. Muscles are proteins, and if in fact the body needs proteins because you have a lack of them, maybe a lack in your diet, or you're not eating enough proteins, your muscles are a protein reserve, just the way the bones are mineral reserve. Muscles are a protein reserve. Now, we don't necessarily consider that a positive thing when you're using muscles for your source of protein, but it is there, and that's what they are. That's one of the things that functions that they provide for you. Going into a little bit of the design of muscle, and particularly this is a system. Systems are going to have generally more than one type of tissue, and muscle system is no different, where you have connective tissue involved, you have nerves, you have muscles, and there are some areas where you have a little bit of epithelial cells too, but not so much. There are three layers of connective tissues: the epimysium, perimysium, and endomysium. So myo is your word root for muscle. So anytime you see that, you're thinking, oh, it has something to do with muscle. And this is the three layers of connective tissue going from outside to inside that each have a slightly different function. And what we have here is this young man, and he's contracting his biceps and also his muscles of his forearm. And that muscle then is being blown up into the portions, and then you have a cross section of it so that you can see and compare and contrast. And of course, like all of these pictures, they all come from your textbook. The epimysium is around, that would be the area around the muscle itself. And you can see where that epimysium blends into the tendon. So you can kind of in your head get an idea of where we are layer-wise with the epimysium. So the epimysium, this is going to be connective tissue. This is going to be collagen fibers, some elastin fibers with a non-living matrix. Those collagen fibers can then actually blend into the tendon, and the tendon is going to attach that muscle to the bone. The exterior layer, collagen fiber layer, is connected to the deep fascia, but manages to separate the muscle from the surrounding tissue. So this epimysium has kind of a multi-layer job in the fact that it actually surrounds the muscle itself, muscle proper, but interacts with the tissue that is around the muscle, and that tissue around the muscle is going to be other layers of connective tissue, as well as on top of the muscle you're going to have a layer of fat, then you're going to go to the dermis, then the epidermis. Now, I'm sure I've left a couple of layers out, but you have in your kind of in your head what where we're going with this. And then endo and perimysium and the epimysium come together at the end to form those tendons, as I said. The perimysium, the middle layer, is going to surround groups of muscle fibers, and we are going to call those bundles of muscle fibers fascicles. Bundles of muscle fibers fascicles. In this area, you need to start introducing and blending in nerves and blood vessels, because this is all living tissue, is highly in need of nutrients and oxygen. So the perimysium is you're having the blood vessels that are also feeding the connective tissue, but are going in and feeding and turning into smaller and smaller units into the perimysium. So perimysium, you're thinking more of vascularization in that area, plus you're thinking of multiple bundles of muscle fibers. We haven't gotten down to the actual cell, muscle cell itself. We still have a unit of multiple muscle fibers together in the perimysium. And then the third thing is the endomysium. This is all connective tissue again, and remember this is going to be collagen fibers that are intertwined, or they make a journey from the endo to the peri to the epi to the tendon. So the fibers make a journey. It can be a continuation of fibers, so it can be a branching off and continuation of fibers, but the fibers do marble through, I guess you might say, through the fascicles. Endomysium will surround an individual muscle fiber. This is where you have the smallest level of vascularization, so capillaries, and you're going to have the terminal aspect of the nerve fiber. This terminal aspect of the nerve fiber is going to form the neuromuscular junction. So the junction, or the area where a nerve actually innervates contracting muscles. And also, one other little key player there, the myosatellite cells. So these are the stem cells that exist on this level, on the endomysium level, and they are the only cells that have the ability to go through mitosis, so can replicate themselves and create more fascicles, can create more muscle fibers to repair muscles that actually are having are undergoing the need for repair almost constantly. Muscles have a large need for oxygen. Most of your movement is in the presence of oxygen. We call it aerobic movements. And so muscles have a high need for oxygen, so there's a lot of blood flow to the muscle. High need for ATP, so we need nutrients. We need nutrients brought to the muscle, and both of those, all of that contraction creates waste products that need to be taken away. This whole activity of just being alive, just having muscle tone, body position, is where most of your nutrients go, and most of your calories go, is just to being you. Skeletal muscles are voluntary, so for the most part. There are some exceptions there, but we'll go with voluntary at this point, and they're controlled by the nerves of the central nervous system. So they're actually controlled by nerves at the terminal end, but the information's coming from the CNS, brain and spinal cord. And we'll pick it up on the next one.